Good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, everyone. I'm Katie McManus, and this is Mega Bradley. We are doing our Money Mondays live instead of the Clubhouse where we initially started this whole theme. And we're so excited to talk to you today. We are talking about expectations and money and why they screw each other up. I'm Katie McManus. I'm a business strategist and leadership coach, and Mega Bradley is an incredibly talented money healer, or at least that's what I call her. She does so much more. But Mega, we started on this topic and I kind of just pulled it out of the hat, right? And I'm thinking, like, when you have expectations for your business going perfectly well and you do the math and then you're like, this is the plan, got to stick to the plan. And then the plan obviously doesn't happen. You've just screwed up your relationship with money, with expectation. But when I started talking to you about this, you brought up that it can happen in a negative way as well. Instead of expecting something good to happen, we can actually poison our relationship with money by expecting something bad.
Yep. Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's lots of fun. Well, you and I have had this conversation several times. I think we could probably do something around the parallels between dating and money, because ultimately relationships and money all dance together. The conversation I was having was that I had a client really has infinite potential in terms of the money that can be made, yet this person expects that the money will be taken from them, that the family is going to take the money from them, that their significant other will take the money from them. That's a lot of people I find expect something bad will actually happen if they actually were to be successful. So you deal with that one?
Yeah, I do. Well, there are two sides to it. So there's the age-old advice that if you win the lottery, you need to keep it a secret. Because if you don't, everyone's going to come out of the woodwork asking you for money. Like that, I mean, that is just such a loaded belief. And one that I actually held to be true a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, a few years ago. It feels like ages ago. So there's that. And then there's also, my clients, when they're working with me, they're building their business. So there's not a lot of money coming in the beginning, either because they don't have any clients or they just have a couple. And so they get triggered in this way all the time because their family members and friends are who care about them, want to check in and see how business is going. And so the questions that get asked are, how's your business? Do you have a lot of clients yet? How much money are you making? And it comes from a place of love, and I want you to do well, and I'm kind of concerned for you that you're starting this business and it's scary, and I think you'd be better served having like a real job. But what it does is it's like, it puts the pressure on the person as if the rest of the world has expectations for them and expects them to fail or expects them to do really well, and then they never match up.
Right.
And it's incredibly unfair to that person who's trying to build a business. So I always have my clients design their relationship with the people who are closest to them, who are aware that they're building a business. So that they can schedule times to do little check-ins like that, especially with your spouse or your nuclear family. Right.
I like that, because I think that in itself staves off a lot of the undue expectations. And whenever you're talking about people have a lot of misconceptions about entrepreneurs, I think, in general. I mean, like some really silly ones, not to judge the things, but they're silly because when you become an entrepreneur, you realize like, well, that was a load of crap. Like somehow or another, like entrepreneurs are really, really like loaded with money. Like somehow, and it's like, Richard Branson. People go from like Sally Joe, who opened a flower shop, to, oh, you're an entrepreneur. So is Richard Branson. Like Richard Branson and Elon Musk are not to be used for barometers to the solopreneur just because they're the one identity name on their brand. And I think that's where it comes in. It's like when you were in corporate America, were you ever in corporate?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When you're inside the fences of corporate America, And I say fences because if you just go to work and you log in and you sign on and you do your job and you go home and you get a dollar amount, you have a natural expectation that your boss will have a check for you.
Right. Well, it's in the contract. They should have a check.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you're thinking if that person is the entrepreneur, if you're depending on the size of your company that you're working for, but I don't think people typically even think about corporate structure. They get a job, they go to work, they expect that they're going to get a paycheck. They expect that the person who writes that paycheck has all of it figured out and taken care of and is stable. And let me tell you, I had a business with a bunch of employees at one point in time, and a bunch of mortgages and a bunch of everything else. And it was a shit show behind the scenes, even though we made a lot of money.
Right.
But that money flows. Money has velocity.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when you're in a corporate environment, you think, oh, it's safe, it's stable, of course this person's got the money. And so there's a misconception that then when you step out and become an entrepreneur and you go tell your friends and family that you're venturing into an entrepreneur thing, you don't really understand what you're doing. And that sharing, oh my gosh, it's so valuable that you're doing that, because I think most people don't even know how to have a conversation about that.
Right. And like, people just don't even realize that conversation can be on the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just knowing how to have the conversation. It's like, oh, I didn't even realize I could design how we have this conversation, or if we even have this conversation.
We've become expectation of being judged around money,
mm-hmm.
which half the time it's legit because somebody's going to come for you, right? The key is you don't believe somebody's going to judge you about the money. The key is you don't care if they judge you for the money, which is, liberty of personal empowerment. But that's
right. Right. I mean, there are a million other things I would personally prefer to be judged on, and valid things I could be judged on, right?
Mike, want something to judge me on? Hang out with me for a day. I'm sure.
Talk to me about my dating life, then you'll have plenty to judge me on, all right? Hi, Shreyas. Nice to see you. Welcome. Oh gosh, I had a thought, and where'd it go? Here it is. So there's also this expectation when you go from that very stable-ish, like in the fence, I love that term, in the fence of a corporate structure. You're used to, I put in 40 hours of work and I get out X amount of dollars, right? And this is one of the hurdles that I have to work on with some of my clients. It's like, yes, you're going to put in 40 hours of work, and then you're going to put in another 40 hours of work, and then you're going to put another 40 hours of work in, and you're going to have open expectancy of whatever money chooses to come your way. You're just going to be wide open to it. But you can't say, I'm going to put in this work and I expect to get this back. If you do that, you lock things down, and it's like an energy gridlock. And as we know, money is just energy, because you're expecting for tap, and it just doesn't work that way.
It does. Yeah. I love that you're pointing that out, because I think that, yes, I have people tell me how I just can't be successful with this business. And I'm like, well, let's break down what you're actually doing and figure out that they're actually just trying to work. And it's not to say, and I think itself is another ideology and an expectation that you have to like slave to no end,
right,
in order to be, I mean, there's both ways, but I think oftentimes people do. They put in what would have been the equivalent amount. They leave their accounting job and go become an accountant on their own and start their own accounting business. Right. And then forget about all those operational hours that have to happen beyond, especially if you're in a trade business.
Right.
Versus like, I even go through this, like right now, I just launched a program, and I'm queuing up the assistants, but I'm also a control freak on the particular piece of content that I'm having. I don't want to delegate it to an assistant. Right. What does that mean? It means some Spotify music for me, and whether the person ever knows I was the one that pulled their human design chart, I'm pulling it because I can't have it be messed up, or I could literally send them down a rabbit hole that has nothing to do with who they are.
Right. Right.
um, and so whenever you're in a personal touch business, there's all the personal touch hours, and then there's all the operations pieces,
Yeah.
delegating and hiring staff comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like next level conversation around
Yeah,
expectation.
no, totally. Well, it's so funny you point there, because there's also like lead generation. Like you're not just going to start a business and magically have clients. Not like there's this magic radar that you send out into the universe and then people come knocking on your door like, here, take my money.
Right.
You have to put yourself out there, and you have to put yourself out there even more and more and more, and go outside your comfort zone. And then people start paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then they want a way to have an experience of you before they become your client. And it's this whole buildup,
Yeah.
And it's funny, some of my clients who come specifically from a sales background like me, and I struggled with this as well when I started my business, is I'm used to having a quota. I'm used to being told, this is how many sales you should be able to make by the end of the month. This is how much activity you need to do that. Here are the activities you're set to. Go. And it being like there being an expectation that if I do all these things, I will get this certain amount of money at the end of the month.
Right.
And it's really hard for a new entrepreneur who comes from a sales background to not have that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just the system they've been trained in.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why, speaking of sales, having some sort of tracking inside of your own, when you're left to quote unquote be your own boss, that can be a lot of fun. That you literally have to have your own accountability. And that's where masterminding and peer accountability, like even if you're in the part of like you and I could sit, we do different but similar things, but technically we do different sides. So we could toss back and forth. It's great to find somebody that is literally close enough to what you do that they don't have to sit there and have to have a rocket science conversation about, I don't understand what you do. Right. And you have to get past the scarcity expectation.
Right.
That you dare, like, oh, if I talk to Katie and tell her about my abundance program, she's going to come steal it from. No, that's the very reason you even have a single thought about, oh, this person might take my business from me. I don't care. I can stand in a room with 5 other people who do theta healing and human design and money coaching, and like, great. I got people to serve. You got people to serve. Create masterminds with your own people that do the same. Mm-hmm. Then you'll really rock your circles, because then you go, oh, what's working for me is this. And it's like, the universe loves to reward that, because it's like, oh, they're not sitting over there hoarding their walnuts in the corner like Gollum, and it's the precious.
That's the one celebrity impression I can do is Gollum. And it worked really well when I had a little poodle named Precious. But anyway, Sarah Wagner said, oh, I like the quantification of personal touch fee operations. I didn't want you to miss that.
Thank you. Yeah. So what other kind of expectations do you see people have?
Oh, I mean, name an activity that
like, how many hours are we going today?
Yeah, I mean, name an activity that someone has in their business, and I guarantee you there's some kind of expectation attached to it. Mm-hmm. It could be writing a blog. It could be writing a post. And I feel this too. I say this about my clients, but like, I know this so intimately, is that you write a post for social media and you're convinced it's profound and it's wonderful and it's going to change lives and cool things, and no one comments.
It's like a cave cricket comes walking across this.
Yes. No one comments, like 3 people like it, and one of them's your mom. And
then the other one was you, because you accidentally hit like.
I know, and then you have to undo it, and you're like, shit, I don't want people to think I'm that person who likes my own. I mean, so there's that. There's also like expectations for what happens when you have money. I mean, so many people sabotage their own success because they have this expectation that once they accept money, like they're going to have all this responsibility. I mean, one of the things that I try to bust really, really early on, even before someone's a client, is they're like, oh, well, I'm just worried that I'm going to have to hire a huge team to help me handle like 10 clients. And it's like, no, you won't. But also, if you have 10 clients and you charge enough, like, great. Like, why not outsource some stuff? You know, and you can totally, there's like this expectation that here it is. This is, and as I'm talking through it, I'm realizing it's an expectation that I can't handle this.
Oh,
whatever it is. And it goes to that saying that we're far more afraid of the possibility of our own success than we are of our potential failures.
That's a perfect one for the and also dating thing.
Right.
People bail out of whenever they're, oh, can't do this. Well,
right.
No, you never will if you keep bailing out. Like, you know, because one of the other expectation things that I think goes with that is that people expect that they invest in something that they're going to get the return, because it kind of goes to what you were talking about on the writing. This kind of inspired my thought on this. Like the whole, oh, I paid ghostwriters, copywriters, social media people. I paid all this money to get my visibility, and then crickets, more cave crickets. And and the whole thing that I think happens is that, like, let's say you invest $500, I'll be very conservative because I've paid $5,000 for a sponsorship at a booth or something. that expectation is like, that is going to be the be all end all. This is going to change my business.
Yep.
It may not. Walk in with the expectation that this is like said and done, because I've literally sat with people, you probably have too, at conferences, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm putting the money into it, so now I'm going to see a return. It's like, oh God, you know what? Money is like, that's the transactional piece of this, but the elbow grease and the momentum and the allowing and all the other stuff is what actually allows the thing to turn into return on investment.
Right.
So you can't throw money at a problem and think they cannot expect that money will solve the problem unless you're hiring an attorney to write a letter for someone. You know.
Oh, totally. And, it's so funny, as you're describing that, like, I had this image that money is really just a doorway. It's a key to a door. It allows for the door to open, but you actually have to walk through.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that whatever action needs to be taken on the other side, that you own that, and you leverage that key for any other door that's open there.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an event where I had spent a really good money, fancy booth. Even I've got the flower arrangement, the booth arranger, and all that other stuff. Yeah. I mean, it was, and what I didn't have was the right product to offer once I got the leads.
Right.
So that goes back to that whole expectation thing. So I always like make sure that where you're placing your expectation is actually equal to the thing you're expecting, not just because the price tag looked like it was enough of an investment.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, and you're talking about, sponsoring an event and showing up at the table and that, but the same thing happens on social media. Coaches, consultants, lawyers, like, they show up, they post really profound stuff or helpful things and things that, draws attention to who they are, what they do, and who they help, which is all essential. You have to build awareness for what you're up to. But then there can be this level of frustration, well, it didn't turn into clients. And it's like, well, yeah, like, it's a big jump to post something and then have people land on a call with you. You have to create some kind of thing that they can show up to get an experience of you, or some kind of like PDF that shows that you're contributing something, whatever it is. And you have to have the systems in place. It's far more than just like thinking up a clever post and posting it and then, waiting, like hoping and praying that everything's going to show up.
Well, and to go with that, the thought that comes to mind is you have to make sure that you don't expect that trust is implicit. We cannot assume that just because we're visible that we're trustworthy.
Right.
Because there's so much noise and so much competition that this goes back to where consistency comes in. And Lord knows, being a mom of kids and distracted 5 different ways to Sunday, it's like, that's why my personal Facebook page is the only consistent thing that I'm like, If they're in my tribe and they're in my Facebook, I like what Dave said. I'm going to say what he's always saying. That was a little endorsement there. Find consistency where you can give it, because it is expected that you can't sell to people who don't trust you, because they're not going to give you their money. I mean, some people might, but that's not how to run a business successfully.
Right.
So yeah, it's like, what expectations do I have of these people that I want to have invest in me? Many times we don't have good expectations of those people.
Right. Well, and it's interesting when we address the expectations that we have about people, we also have to look at the expectations they may have of us.
Mm-hmm. I like to ask people. It's so fun.
Oh yeah. What kind of answers?
Well, what's funny is some people are like, I don't know. I was referred to you by so-and-so. So I, like going through the trust thing. And I'm like, but what expectations do you have? And they're like, I don't know. Which leads to immediate disappointment, because we all have expectations about every single thing. We just may not articulate them. And it's not a common conversation. It should be. It should be in every, it's the most freeing thing for you to know what the other person's expectations are. And it's also freeing to not be bracing for, are they going to disappoint me? So when you say, this is what I'm expecting from you, it actually makes the flip side difficult conversation. Let's say something doesn't go right. You can say, you don't have to belabor it. You go, you know what, this isn't what I expected. And that's not what I laid out when I said I wanted to work with you. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, you're right.
Right.
Not story about every person that's ever betraying you and bye. And there's so much, like, people take whatever, all the other people's expectations that ever disappointed them and throw them at you as expectations. And you're like, I never signed up for that.
You're saying that, I'm having flashbacks from really bad dates. Where like this guy is going through, like, jumping through hoops to try to prevent me from becoming the same story that they've had previously. Which, I mean, if you want to talk about the kid peeing in the pool at the 4th of July barbecue and ruining the party, that's exactly how you do it.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. And here's what happens with money is like having credit card debt and recovering from it, and then having this story that you can't be trusted with credit cards. Then you bend over backwards trying to prove or prevent that from ever happening again. It doesn't actually prevent it from happening again, unless you actually heal the root core of the problem.
Yeah, I was just having this conversation with somebody in the last, today. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we take on other people's expectations. This is something, for all of you who know that you have a people pleaser flag, go ahead and raise it high and go, oh gosh, here we go. We take on expectations that are not ours, whether it's around money, whether it's about those money relationships. Like, we'll take on, oh, I'm going to try to make sure that I spend the perfect thing and buy but you're like, did you actually ask the person what the budget was or how much money they wanted to spend? You're like, oh, but you didn't. Okay. So we take on a lot of expectations that are not ours, because if that people pleaser radar is going up, then the money side is going down usually. Katie, I'm going to call you out and say thank you, because you and I were having a conversation about this, because I was like, the last time I offered up one of my packages and you were like, hey, and meanwhile I'm over here going, that doesn't feel right. Like, it just energetically, and this is how I live my life, right? Like, it's like, there's something off in the energy. And you're over here going, you and I need to have a little chat. And I realized that I have expectations of, I want to help as many people as I can. Mm-hmm. So there was a diminishing on what I can charge and be paid. I mean, that's really funny. I had a conversation, went back to a couple of my regular clients, and I'm like, I'm raising my rates to this. And they're like, oh, that totally makes sense. And I was like,
I mean, I love that you're going here because it's true. We have expectations that we make up. They're complete bullshit. Right?
It's like, person looks at you like, well, I was just waiting to see how long you were going to charge me X. I don't know, you know? And like literally people like, I've had that happen in multiple circumstances over the course of time where it's been like asking, how much are you expecting to spend is a great place to start with where you take the sales conversation. Because then you know, like, and it's not to say I'm not telling you to be like crafty with your prices. Like, oh, you get the $10,000 level because you said you were saying. I'm not talking about that. You know what? You have your price, but then you get to know the other person's, back to you said, asking other people's expectations. It's okay to ask someone, what do you expect to be paying for this? Yeah. And half of them are like, I don't know. What's the least amount of money? If it's like, okay, that's why you're trying to hire an abundance coach. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and if you go to expectations, you know, there are a lot of abundance coaches out there who charge $50 an hour.
Yes.
And you know what my brain goes to when I hear that is like, oh, you must not be that good. Like, sorry, I just expect that. And also I expect that I won't get anything out of it. Because if I'm only spending $50 on changing my whole relationship and mindset with money, and for me, it's very based in money because, you know, for abundance, you know, everything else is abundant and money for me has been a key point. Like, I'm just going to, like, you don't sound that good at manifesting money for yourself. Like,
right. Yeah. Or if your business cards, no offense to our friends at whatevercompany.com. If you have the branded name of the company that provided your business cards to you and you say that you sell a high-end product, go order new cards right now and get that nonsense stripped off of there.
Right.
Because you lower my expectations. If I get your business card and it literally has a freebie or an email that is not a business email, my expectation of what you value yourself and what you return to me goes down.
Yep.
And some people are like, well, fine then, talk to you. But
well, another way that we set expectations out there about ourselves is either listing our pricing on our websites or not. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm in the camp of I never list my pricing on my website. If someone asks me what my pricing are, I'm more than happy to tell them. But I want to set the expectation that I'm expensive. And generally when the price isn't listed, you assume it's expensive.
Correct. Yeah. And I've seen, you know, I'm getting ready to finally revamp my, I love that. An abundance coach charging feels like the guy called me. I can get about it. Exactly. Virtual high five, David.
Yep.
Lost my train of thought now, but what was I saying? See, that's what happens. I don't read the little thing.
Sorry.
It was good. I appreciate I don't remember where I was going. Do you remember?
Sorry, David distracted both of us.
Squirrel, shiny object. It's all good.
Yeah.
It'll come back when it needs to.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it goes to marketing as well, like setting expectations for what people can expect when they work with you. It's like, okay, well, if you commit to the work, then you can expect whatever results come out of that. Right. You know, but if you're not going to do the work, you can't have any expectations of what is going to come out of it. They really, like, you can have, Sarah K. Wagner, business cards and email.
Oh yeah, that's right. We were talking about that. Yeah. Thank you. It's what happens when we get shiny things, and we read it again, but now we're going to keep on track with the marketing thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to set the expectation that people have to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's also a qualifier. I remember now. See, because it goes back around. So one of the things I will do is say, number one, if people just want to know the pricing, they're not looking to work with you for the reason that we typically want to move their needle. Like they're they're focused in solution being associated to how many people can I compare X price to? And there's so many other factors that if you're not willing to get in a conversation with me, for me to know, like, I think this is one of the things that happens with expectations is we have a kind of a standard thing of I'm the customer and I'm coming out and I'm going to hire XYZ person. So I'm shopping. It's like, I'm also shopping, because if my job is to facilitate transformation for you to shift your life, I have to know that you're not so attached to the old stories,
right,
that you expect to get to keep the old story and work with me.
right. Right.
So I think one of the things, the whole customer is always right thing, like I am all about customer service, but it's important for us as consumers that we want people who have expectations of us. Otherwise, they're just taking our money.
Right.
Many times. It's just transactional. It's purely transactional.
Yeah. I mean, this goes from like top tier coaching, healing, all the way down to downloading an app that was $2 on the app store. It's not going to do you any good unless you actually log in and use it.
Correct. Yes.
You said something that opened a door for me, and it's expectation is kind of like having an attachment to the how. So if I've been going along and expecting that X type of activity is going to get me Y type of result, and it's not working out, like that's the dangerous cycle of expectation.
Right.
If I'm not willing to look at X activity and release it and say, oh, cool, maybe this isn't serving me. Maybe Y results come out of something completely different.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to how much are you willing to climb the mountain to get to the top of the mountain? Like, do you want a helicopter to drop you off, or are you really going to climb?
Right. It's so funny you say that, because there's this bumper sticker that you see around Massachusetts a lot, and I think it's the Mount Whitney. I can't remember. There's a mountain around here.
Yeah, I think it is.
You can either climb to the top of, or you can drive to the top of. And people like, I climbed the mountain. It's like, no, you didn't. You drove. You're a cheater.
It's like you climbed the mountain with 75,000 horsepower. Okay, yeah, way to go.
Right. Right.
Yeah, well, and that ultimately is the thing about overall expectation, and we're coming up not too far off the top of the hour. But I think the thing is that when we sit with unspoken parameters, we set ourselves up for expectations not being met.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And whether we are the client, whether we are the romantic opposite partner, whether it doesn't matter which thing it is, we will be disappointed. And some people are so committed to being disappointed that they will never speak their expectations.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So there's, ask what the other person expects of you.
Totally. Well,
you and I have had that conversation many times.
Yeah, of course. Well, and it's, it takes, you and I have both individually done a lot of personal work to clear a lot of the garbage that goes on. Like, oh God, I don't want to name my expectations here. It feels weird. Work. The metaphor that comes to me is like, if you want to see a cardinal, like a wild cardinal, you can absolutely set out as many bird feeders as you want, but you can't just sit there and stare at the bird feeders. You have to look all around you. You have to look for flashes of red. Yeah. If you just focus on, this is the one way I'm ever going to see a cardinal, you might not ever see it.
You might not, unless it flies in your garage like mine did the other day.
Oh, really?
Open the garage, and literally the cardinal flew in. I'm like, who is visiting me? All right, but that's a whole other. So what is the number one thing that you would say people need to do in their, let's just say, in their sales process to shift expectations?
It's so funny. I think, especially if you're going from I was an employee to I run my own business, you have to make it very clear in the beginning of the call that it's a two-way interview. Someone's not just interviewing you to see if they're going to hire you. It's no longer that conversation. You are having a conversation to see if this is a fit for you to take on this client.
Right.
You know, and make it clear in the beginning in a very like polite way. You're not like, oh, you have to prove that you're good and maybe I'll take you on. You know, you say, cool, we're going to see if this is a fit for both of us.
Yeah.
It's an energetic shift. And it sets the expectation that, okay, it's not just you vetting me, it's me vetting you as well.
Right. Well, and yes, I don't want to take money from people who have a mismatch to me in relationship.
Right.
Because it's ultimately a disappointment for them and a frustration for me. Right. And there is enough abundance and enough who's the next person, that ultimately we don't need to stay in any circumstance, any job, any contract, any relationship, anything that is ultimately a soul suck for either person.
Yeah.
Now, you of course have to end those contracts nicely if you end up deciding to leave one, but that's a whole other day and another conversation.
Yeah. I think the one positive expectation that we can all adopt in our lives is I have an expectation that the universe wants the best for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only thing there is you don't know what's best for you. The universe is going to decide.
Well, it's a matter of trusting. I trust myself. That's what I think one of the things is. It's like I stay open to what will show up, and I follow my intuition, which of course people many times are like, well, I can't trust my intuition. I always pull into the left lane of traffic and that's where the accident is. And it's like, oh, yeah. So, but staying open and actually minimizing the number of expectations and rather focusing on the desired outcome, because desired outcome is a different feeling than expectation.
Right. Right. So, when you focus on the desired outcome, like the ways to get there are infinite. When you have an expectation, there's just like one or two paths, and it's very limiting.
Yeah. Okay, set up for disappointment.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the top of the hour. I know I have a call. I imagine you do as well.
Yep.
So a little work is to sit down and do some journaling with yourself and figure out where you're having expectations of what should be working and why, and, you know, spend some time with that. And remember that you're in choice. You can choose to still believe that if you want to, if it serves you. But if it's not serving you, you have so many other ways that you could believe.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. Thank you for bringing this conversation forward today. And as always, it's fun to have these discussions. And literally, I think we just do this, speaking of expectations, like we just go, well, you know, we'll have the conversation that we need to have, which is a great expectation, because it's like, I just know it'll be what whoever is listening needs. So hopefully we've given you something valuable. And I did see that Sarah, because now I figured out where the comments was here in our StreamYard, because it's like, oh, there's a comments tab. Where Sarah had asked about pricing on the webpage.
Oh, I think she was trying to remind us.
Okay, yeah.
Where you're going,
yeah. So, I think putting ranges, this was the finishing my last thought. It's like squirrel wraparound. I think sometimes you can put a range, which then leaves people figuring out, well, what's the delta?
Right.
So anyway, so that was that, like,
I love that.
Finishing that thought from 5 minutes ago or 15 minutes ago.
As always on these lives, we've bounced around, we've gone everywhere, we had tangents, it was a wild ride. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Katie McManus, business strategist and leadership coach. This is Megan Bradley, money healer extraordinaire. Thank you for joining us. I hope to be going live every day this week, so tune in. Lots of fun topics coming at you, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me, Mega.
Bye.
Bye.